of the DRB. Please silence your phones and devices. For Zoom technical questions, contact planning staff through Zoom chat. I'll begin with a roll call of DRB members in attendance this evening. Nate Andrews, the chair, is present. Scott Riley. Here. Jim Brazileira.
Present.
Brian Curtis.
Present.
Matt Fraser.
Present.
Dylan Hornibrook.
Present.
Great, thank you. The following items are on the agenda for tonight's public hearing. DP 26-12, Asch Enterprises at 685 Commercial Ave in the IZDW, and DP 25-04 at Caboose Lane in the ARZD. The Development Review Board follows the rules of procedure and conducts quasi-judicial proceedings, aka public hearings like court, pursuant to Williston's Unified Development Bylaw, WDB, Chapter 6 and Appendix A. The powers of the DRB are established in and limited by this bylaw, as well as state statute, and expounded upon in the staff reports for each public hearing application. As volunteer public officials, we are held to the standards of the Williston Volunteer Policy and the Williston Conflict of Interest Ordinance. For any public hearing item tonight, does any member wish to be excused on account of a conflict of interest? Does any member wish to report an ex parte contact? Ex parte contact meaning communicating with or receiving communication from any person in regards to an application on tonight's agenda. Participants are advised that there are specific statutory requirements for becoming an interested party who can appeal a decision. Anyone wishing to be considered an interested party must provide spoken or written testimony and provide their name and mailing address. For more information, see WDB 6.8 and 24 VSA 4465. With that, we are going to open tonight's first hearing, which is DP 26-12, Asch Enterprises. Hello, Doug, if you could please state your name and address for the record, and then we'll turn it over to staff.
Good evening, I'm Doug Roulette from the Bowling Group, at 420 South Ridge Road, Williston.
Thank you. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Nate. This is a request for a discretionary permit to construct a 50-space parking lot on the north of the industrial building located at 6085 Marshall Ave. The DRB approved DP 1107 in 2020 that included a parking lot in this location, but the parking lot was not built at that time. The overall property is about 37.5 acres. The use is industrial and no change of use is proposed. It's located in the Industrial Zoning District West, and this application was not subject to design review or conservation commission review. Staff recommends approval with findings, conclusions, and conditions as drafted. The DRB and applicant should discuss bicycle parking and trip facilities. And I'll get to the memo that I passed out this evening that talks about those elements. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing this application. Prior permit approvals include various changes to the parking lots over the years, loading dock, storage tanks, and trash receptacle containers on the site. The Police Department and Public Works Department did not have comments on the application. The Fire Department did not respond to the request for comments. And no addressing updates are needed for this property. No public comment memos were received at the time of mail out. In terms of the standards for the industrial zoning district, this complies as proposed. The parking lot is more than 100 feet above any of the property boundaries, well beyond the required setbacks. No outdoor sales are proposed, and no modifications to outdoor storage are proposed. The main focus for review tonight is off-street parking. Compliance is anticipated. Parking is very flexible for industrial uses. This facility employs 450 people and is growing, and it has multiple shifts. So the industrial standard starts at 1 space per 1,000 square feet, and they have significantly more than that given the number of employees that are present on the site. In terms of accessible parking, this complies as proposed. with the dimensional standards, 9 by 18 feet in width, and the access aisles are 24 feet wide, which exceeds the required minimum. The main point of review is bicycle parking, so the DRB should look at finding of fact number 3 and condition number 8A, and the DRB should discuss. Prior to the staff report, I didn't have all of the information, but what the applicant provided is an email with information from the Twincraft tenant about their bicycle parking usage. Based on the information, the 3 bike racks, which provide 13 spaces, and then space for 16 bicycle racks inside, should be sufficient. And they do have 2 shower facilities, so they are able to meet the end of trip facility requirement. This is not subject to design review. The landscaping complies as proposed. The other comment from the applicant in the memo is about the watershed health chapter requirements. So there is a wetland and wetland buffer present on the site. The staff recommendation was boulders every 15 feet where development is within 10 feet of the buffer. What the applicant is requesting is using different delineation, such as signage indicating that it's a wetland revegetation area. What follows are findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval. The DRB paying note to condition number 8A and B. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Doug, do you have anything you'd like to add or clarify from that staff report?
Just a few things. First of all, just the reason Twincraft feels they need this 50 space is it's really during regular working hours, parking's not a problem. But they've got 2 shifts, and due to their processing, the shifts and the people working the shifts have to overlap. So it's that overlap period when both shifts are present that they fall short of parking spaces. So that's the real reason. And motivation for this is to cover that. Unfortunately, it's a short-term problem, but it's a problem. As far as bicycle parking, as Emily said, they've got 3 bike racks around. The actual main facility is 687 Marshall Ave, which doesn't even show up on the plan. It's a second building on the property. So they've got so most of the manufacturing is done in that building. So as I said, they've got 3 bike racks with a total of 13 spaces. Friday morning, I went out, a nice sunny morning. There were no bikes in any of those. Then we reached out to Michelle Asch, the chief person officer, and basically asked her, what the background was with, bike usage and such, and why there seemed to be a lack of bicycles. And, she basically said it was, her opinion was because of the timing of the shifts. The first shift of the day starts at 5 a.m. and goes through till 3:30 in the afternoon, and the second shift starts at 3:15. So there's your overlap, and ends at 1:45 the next morning. So for somebody that works more than a few miles away, they've got to get on the road at 4:30 in the morning with their bicycle to get to work for the first shift. At the other end, if you're a second shift, you're riding home on a bike at 1:45 in the morning. So I just think obviously that's an issue. People just don't feel comfortable doing that. Some people take the bus, but that's limited to. I think the demographics are that most of the employees live too far away to bike anyway, even with the problematic hours that they work. So our overreaching summary is that the bike facilities are more than adequate at this point. They're excessive really for the use they get. Second thing that Emily brought up was we are working within a portion of the watershed protection buffer. There is no parking in that area, but we are needing to do some drainage. We've had the state wetland there, and they're satisfied with the revised wetland impacts, and they're, will proceed with applying for a wetland permit. Because it's a commercial use, this area is just open lawn area. I don't know if the site plan up, but or a photo. There's no residential component obviously there, so there really isn't a reason anyone should be needing to be alerted of the presence of the wetland other than lawn maintenance folks. So we've got a little over 2,000 square feet of watershed buffer, which is the orange hatch there. And to mitigate that, we've got an equal amount, approximately, of revegetative buffer to the south, just out of that frame, that we will demarcate and leave to revegetate naturally. So instead of putting boulders down, which I think I calculated about 17 boulders, we're proposing an alternative, again, for the maintenance folks, every 30 feet to put a sign that says mowing limits, wetland area, or something of that nature. So my recommended wording change to condition, what is the last one, 21, would be just adding a second sentence to that condition that says, alternately, signage may be used in lieu of boulders if approved by the state wetlands office. So basically asking folks to defer to the wetland office as a reasonable alternative. Historically, we found boulders don't convey any message. They're just boulders. People think they're landscape features and just mow around them and go beyond them, not knowing that they have anything to do with wetlands or buffers. So signage isn't as long term as a boulder, but at least it conveys information that's something we need. That's all I have.
Thanks, Doug. To clarify, I know you said the bike racks are at 687. Are there showers at 685, or are they only at 687?
I didn't ask. I believe they're at least at 687.
Okay.
I don't know about 685.
Okay. Thanks. Any questions from the DRB tonight? Okay.
I'll add for the record about the fire department comment memo. The fire department did send a memo on May 22nd that they had no comments.
Got it.
So we did hear from them, but they don't have to.
Okay. Still think that's done?
Doug, just going back to what you just said about showers. So two showers are in one of the buildings. Yes?
Yes. I'm confident at 687. Right now, Twin Craft only occupies a portion of 685. The other portion, I don't know if it's half and half or not, is a tire warehouse facility.
Is 687 the big building or the?
687 is the one that's not shown on the plan, is the bigger of the two buildings to the closer to the interstate. 685 is the one that shows up on the plans.
So our bylaw doesn't have a distance requirement when it's internal to a site. So both facilities are same property ownership. It's only if there is going to need to be like a lease agreement with the nearby use that there would be that 300-foot requirement.
Last chance, anybody before we close this one tonight? Cool. All right. Thanks, Doug. With that, we are going to close this hearing at 7:14 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Next up is DP 25-04. Caboose Lane in the ARZD. Welcome. If you could please give your names and address for the record, and then we'll turn it over to staff.
John Marcotte, 141 Caboose Lane.
Brian Courier, Deliberative Civil Associates.
All right, thank you, Brian and John. We're going to turn this over to staff for the report.
Thanks, Dave. This is a request for discretionary permit for a 10-lot open space subdivision located on Caboose Lane in the agricultural rural residential zoning district. The subject parcel is about 197 acres and is crossed by Caboose Lane and an existing forestry road. The parent parcel is greater than 10.5 acres, so it is subject to open space development standards. 8 of the lots are proposed to be house lots with single-family dwellings located on them. The 2 lots, lots 9 and 10, are proposed to be open space lots. This was not subject to design review, but was subject to Conservation Commission review. Staff's recommendation is to take testimony, close the hearing, deliberate, and approve the application. Staff recommends that the DRB retain approval of the final plans because several conditions require minor revisions to the civil plan and plat, as well as a variety of legal documents depending on if they go the inclusionary zoning or growth management tracks. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing the request. This subdivision began with pre-application review in November 2024. It received growth management allocation in March 2025. The DRB reviewed a boundary line adjustment with the abutting property May 12th of this year. And prior approvals in the early 2000s and 1990s were for other subdivisions of this parcel. The Conservation Commission reviewed this application. Their recommendations are included as conditions of approval. The police and public works department did not have comments. The fire department did comment, however, their memo is excluded from the conditions of approval because the fire department plan review standard is a select board policy, not an ordinance, and therefore can only be enforced to the extent that it correlates with the standard in the bylaw. Some of their comments about the driveway are already met by the driveway standards, such as pull-offs or the width of the driveway. E911 addressing, a condition is included that the road name and addressing be worked out and that a plan be provided prior to final plans to confirm all the unit numbers. No comment letters were received at the time of mail out until this evening. What followed is a recitation of the pre-application recommendations. So these are the recommendations from November 2024. Most of them have been addressed in the applicant's discretionary permit submittal. Some about reconfiguring lot 6 and lots 9 are not applicable anymore because some of the units moved around a little bit. And some things will need revisions at final plans, primarily as they relate to the Conservation Commission review of the habitat disturbance assessment. In terms of the standards of the agricultural rural residential zoning district, compliance is anticipated with the side and rear lot setbacks. The density we'll discuss later, but it does comply with the minimum open space lot size. The open space development standards, compliance is anticipated. However, see the Conservation Commission recommendations about the conservation areas. We'll dive into those a little bit later. As well as a recommendation about slopes greater than 30%, 50 to 29%. Use of protected open space, there is a specific condition. Although septic systems are allowed in open space, there are 2 lots where the boundary should be adjusted so that the septics are fully contained within the platted lots and avoid the need for a sewer easement into the open space. Open space must be platted as its own lot, and this plays into how they move forward, whether they go with the inclusionary zoning or with a third party or town dedication to the open space. But if it moves forward in such a way that it's not to be dedicated to a town or third party, then open space lots 9 and 10 to be consolidated into one lot. envelopes line up well with the clearing area and where the septic systems are. Right now, there's some space between where a building envelope ends and a septic system begins that looks like lawn and will function like lawn. So just some reconfiguring on lots 1, 2, 4, and 6 and 7 to make sure that where homeowners are going to assume and use lawn areas or want to locate an accessory structure is within their building envelope. All other standards of 31.8, compliance is proposed, 31.9. There is condition number 17 that a trail easement serving the Caboose Lane residents should be provided that connects Caboose Lane over the private open space to the town trail easement. So just ensuring that the private residents on Caboose Lane have an ability to access the other trail easement. That's pretty much it for chapter 31. Chapter 7, maintenance of required improvements, so final plans will need to see declaration of covenants, articles of incorporation, and bylaws for the association to ensure that private uses will be maintained. And there is a specific recommendation about the control of invasive species that we'll get to in a moment. Chapter 11, so the subdivision proposes 8 dwelling units and therefore has 2 pathways forward. They can move forward with their growth management score that they got in March 2025. That does include 25 out of 30 points for open space dedication to the town or third-party agency. The other option is to be an inclusionary zoning project and provide 1 dwelling lot affordable at 100% area median income. So whichever way they go, they'll need to provide the appropriate documentation at final plans. If that the land is to be dedicated or the affordability covenants for that. Chapter 13, access. This subdivision is served by Caboose Lane, which is a shared private driveway and curb cut onto South Road and Town Highway. It currently serves 3 houses and it will serve a total of 11 houses. So there's 2 specific findings of fact and conclusions of law drafted. This driveway is a little bit longer than usually allowed and serves more units than is usually allowed. And this can be permitted where the density is reduced to 1 dwelling per 10 acres. And that is applicable here. These were recommendations that were made by the board at pre-application, that this project would be able to move forward with that longer driveway and serving more number of units under the reduced density. But in terms of the driveway specifications, we need to see a profile that confirms the grade will not exceed 10%. The first portion of Caboose Lane that's already existing will need to be upgraded to comply with the 14 feet width and 4 feet clear on each side. And the first 30 feet must be paved. There also needs to be pull-offs provided every 400 feet. This is one place where our bylaws are more particular. The fire department wants 500 feet, our bylaws is 400 feet. The bylaw prevails there. And driveways can count, driveway aprons can count as those pull-off areas, provided that that 400 foot spacing is met. There's no off-street parking minimum or maximum for single-family homes and duplexes. On-site infrastructure complies. Each home has its own well and septic system. And maintenance, solid waste containers will not be consolidated at this time. Each home site will be responsible for their own waste management. Density. The density would yield a theoretical maximum of 110 dwellings. However, due to the reduction, it's limited to 1 dwelling per 10 acres, which would be about 20 dwellings, and they're proposing 11 overall. Landscaping complies as proposed. The exterior forested boundaries provide an ample 50-foot buffer, so no plantings are required along the perimeter of the property. Similarly, street trees, the DRB may waive this requirement where a road passes through existing woods and for open space developments where formal plantings are inappropriate. Lot 1 has a small frontage along South Road, and that existing forest buffer complies. Before we dive into conservation areas, I want to pause there to see if there's any questions from the board.
like it.
Chapter 27, conservation areas. So the habitat disturbance assessment was contracted through the town, conducted by Arrowwood. The Conservation Commission reviewed it on April 15th, and then on May 6th and May 20th, the Commission reviewed their recommendations and approved them. There were some recommendations made by Arrowwood Environmental that the Conservation Commission did not extend forward due to it being a request beyond the scope of the bylaw, interfering with the landowner's right to beneficial use, or the complexity involved with implementing the recommendation. So for example, one of the habitat assessment recommendations was reducing the number of lots, and that would be interfering with the applicant's beneficial use of the subdivision. In terms of other conservation areas, there's not any unique natural community areas where the development is proposed. There are some on the site closer to Lake Iroquois, but the development will not impact this area. There's no uncommon, rare, threatened, or endangered species mapped on the site, nor any farmlands of local importance. Some of the map is mapped within the scenic viewshed area. The Conservation Commission did not make any particular recommendations about this. The most critical ridgeline view area is within the open space. Some of lots 6 and 7 are within the secondary background horizon area. And condition 3E, which we'll get to, talks about reducing those lot sizes, which will reduce that impact. And the building envelopes are the most northwesterly corner, so minimal amount of viewshed impact, if any, is expected. Watershed health, chapter 29. So compliance is anticipated. There is a condition about providing some plans for construction and for how the materials will be stored and stockpiled, and a construction phasing plan to reduce the amount of disturbed area. Wetlands delineation was conducted. The Conservation Commission is recommending that where development is within 10 feet of the buffer, the boulders be spaced 15 feet apart. The state requirement is 50 feet, boulders 50 feet apart from within 25 feet of the buffer. So the conservation recommendation is a little more strict than what the state requires, and it's mainly in those areas where homeowners are likely to be mowing their lawns, just to create a more defined buffer limit. Source water protection areas, the Champlain Water District did not comment on this application. This area is part of the larger watershed area of Shelburne Bay, which is where Williston and other communities obtain their water. Chapter 30, official map, compliance is anticipated at final plans. The trail easement that's shown on the site plan needs to be described on the plat and accompanied by a legal trail easement. There's an unfortunate typo there where I say plan instead of plat. The official map depicts desired trails going in 2 directions, one northwest towards South Road, and the other one goes east and north towards Marcotte. Lastly, impact fees are assessed at the time of administrative permit. If they do go the inclusionary zoning route, there are reductions for transportation impact fees. But it's unlikely to get a recreation or parks impact fee unless it meets the criteria listed. What follows are findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval. I'm going to briefly go over the Conservation Commission recommendations. So 3A is basically saying if lot 10 is not to be owned by a third-party agency or the town, then it needs to be divided from lot 9 because we have one requirement for one open space lot. 3B, that construction phasing plan for storage and stockpiling materials. 3C is about those boulder spacings and the particular locations on the lot where those big boulders need to go. 3D is adjusting the building envelope in relocation to septic systems to prevent homeowner activity encroaching outside the building envelope. to avoid those view shed impacts and the steepest slopes, and to reduce it by wrapping lot 9, which is the private open area lot, around it, rather than increasing the size of lot 10. 3F is about that plat and sewerage easements, just cleaning up those lines so everything can be contained on the single-family lot. Provide a floating trail easement to ensure a functional trail easement that avoids the wetlands and stream crossings and runs as north and east as possible. I'm going to pull up the site plan for that one because I think it makes sense. And you might recall from the boundary line adjustment application, so it comes in off Fairtown Lane, and then where that trail easement goes through here might be a little bit TBD based on the best place for the wetland crossings and wanting to provide that flexibility, particularly in this area where it remains to be seen where exactly the best trail alignment will be. Jumping back over. 3H is the best management practices for control of invasive species and the private association covenants. The Conservation Commission and applicants' discussion on this is, it's pretty lightweight, like a list of recommended and prohibited species, best practices for open space and wetland buffer management, and preventing the spread and proliferation of species. So the most basic things, don't go over your knob and spread it everywhere type of thing. And probably referring to state lists and guidelines to help educate homeowners and the homeowners association on best practices. Jumping back over to the site plan, lots 6, 7, and 8. That's at the top of the hill. So these are where the lots, the building envelopes roughly are, and then it's the back portion that's within the steeper slopes and the view shed areas where it would be brought back in a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Would you mind going back to what you spoke about with the wildlife impact study, the recommendations, and the conflict between the applicant's right to beneficial use of their property? I just want to make sure that I understand that fully. And if you want to look it up, maybe while you guys have a chance to speak a little, if you have any comments or questions after the staff report. Anything at the moment?
I will comment.
Yeah.
That in the habitat disturbance assessment, that stood out like a sore thumb, where the gentleman or the or I don't know if the gentleman or not, but whoever did it made some assumptions that they didn't know what to do.
Can you hit Scott's mic?
Oh, mic was off.
That, like I said, that was an interesting comment that they made.
Sorry, which comment specifically in the report, or which section? Like,
I'm not sure which
roughly
section, but
outlined.
what Emily can tell you which
Yeah.
section is. It was the reduction of the total amount of lots.
right, okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
HDA recommendation number 1 stated, quote, reducing the number of proposed lots, eliminating lots 6, 7, and 8 will reduce fragmentation and decrease impacts on the interior forest, wildlife corridors, and better protect the ecologically rich southern portion of the property, end quote. And what the bylaw standard is for 31.7, what lands must be included in open space. Under conservation areas, it says, open space must include all conservation areas identified in the comp plan to the extent consistent with the landowner's right to beneficial use of his or her property. This means if a landowner has only conservation areas but no other lands physically suitable for development, the Conservation Commission and DRB will work with the landowner to either effect a transfer of development rights or create an open space subdivision development that minimizes consumption of lands that should be protected.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Yeah, I'm interpreting that as somewhat of a blurry line here that we'll talk about in deliberative session, but I want to give you guys a chance to talk about things that you're doing, a lot of which we've already heard, to minimize the impact on wildlife, specifically in regards to that report.
Yeah, so
the section of that report where he starts getting the recommendations, I think what precedes that is, he says that we're making a significant step to conserve open space here. So the requirement's 75%, it's a 200-acre parcel. We're conserving over 90% here in two different open space. We're showing it not lot 9 and lot 10. Lot 9 being about 48 acres and lot 10 being about 130. So our max density here is 55 units going through a traditional methodology here. Now, there's no secret, we're trying to avoid Act 250 by being below the 9-unit threshold, as permitting this project through an Act 250 review would be quite challenging and expensive if we ever got through it. So we're doing 9, we're allotted theoretical density of 55, we're conserving a huge amount of open space here. We're hoping the lot 10 ends up with the town of Williston. That would be our goal. It talks in the staff report about, third-party conservation. Obviously, the town would be our first choice there. If you look at our overall plan, you'll see that lots 6, 7, and 8 are no further than the adjacent lot off Beartown Road, just to the north of us. If anything, we're further to the west than the abutting northern property, and then I believe there's another house even further east.
Yep, that's a house.
That would be the Lafayette house. That's significantly further east than the larger impacted Forester home just to the north of us. So we're not even as deep as the folks off Beartown Road. We're clustering our units in the most practical sense we can, avoiding wetland impacts, trying not to fragment the open space. And our road is designed over an existing forestry road that got cut in there about 10 years ago when the Marcotte family chose to, have a professional forester log the property. And then 6, 7, and 8 is where the log landing is. So, those are areas that are already cleared, already impacted. Our road follows that existing road to the greatest extent possible. We had to, you'll notice in front of lot 3, there's a little bend in it, and that's us avoiding a wetland that the current forestry road crosses now. So given the scale, given the amount of open space, given how far east we are in the core habitat area, we feel we're doing a very good job trying to cluster, keep the development in an isolated section of the piece, and conserving over 90% of it in open space for perpetuity.
I think that's great context, thank you. Are there any questions from the DRB at this point, either for the applicant or for staff?
Not at this time.
Okay. How about any questions from the public on this? Do we have anyone on Zoom or in person who would like to address the board? Nobody's knocking? Okay. There are 2 paths forward on this, and you don't have to tell us which you're going to take. You really don't, and it doesn't affect really what we do tonight. But I'm just curious if you're leaning one way or another, and if the answer is you don't know, or it's 50-50, that's fine.
You've been.
As far as,
I think you're referring to what's going to happen with lot 10.
Right. Lot 10 in regards to, is this moving forward as a growth management project or through inclusionary zoning, right?
Yeah. So the reason lot 10 would need to be conserved by a third party is that's a greater, I don't even know, do you get points for an easement anymore? You get more points if it's conserved through a third party, and that's what we presented to you at sketch plan. And the applicant's been working with the town on that dedication and the acquisition of lot 10. My understanding is that things have been in flux. We spent last summer working with the wetlands program to make sure we could build the access drive as it's seen in front of you. We have applied for a permit. It's on public notice currently, which took some time. But through that process, things have evolved. So the applicant and the town, and this is where John's been dealing with this more so than I have, but following a discretionary permit approval from you folks, things are more solidified. Acreages are known. Before we were working off tax maps. So as we've been going through the process, that's been the idea, is that it gets conserved through a third party, hopefully the town of Williston, though they're not the only third party that likely would take lot 10. But that is our hope.
Williston's who we're discussing right now. It's a possibility that they may transfer that to a different entity for long-term preservation, Vermont Land Trust, or who knows what. We are dealing with Williston. They have a proposal, a written proposal in hand. Nothing has been resolved at this point. All I can say is it seems extremely promising. One of our goals, my parents bought this land back in 1957. And I have had the privilege of using this land for 45 plus years, and lots of people in our neighborhood have used it for many years. We've developed a nice little trail network within it. It's very popular land, but it's something that I think my family has a strong interest in making sure the public has access to it in the future, and that it doesn't disappear into like a wilderness area where nobody's supposed to go in, or it doesn't, well, we don't want it developed. It's, you know, we want the public to be able to enjoy it like we have. So it annexes up to the Lake Iroquois Recreation District. It adds a significant amount of acreage to what's already there. It's, like I've told the town, it's pretty much a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire some pristine land. We've done very minimal logging over the years. It's just a wonderful, and I think the habitat disturbance allowance spoke to the fact that this is some pretty special land in there. So that's where we're at. So that's what we expect, that part, and we would like to convey as much to the town as is possible. We have a lot of HOA land currently. I mean, I'd like to see that maybe adjusted a little bit so we could even get more land to the town. The HOA owning the land is nice. It'll be kept open, but it has more restrictions than what the town would have for restrictions as far as public use.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for all that context. That's very helpful. I want to just ask one last time here if there's anybody on the board that...
One other question. The proposed easement for access, would that be going through HOA land or?
Yeah.
Yes.
So some of the open space would stay HOA land where Caboose Lane goes to access all the units, and then the surrounding area. Let me pull up the plat maybe. Yeah, so what's shown in green is the private open area, and then what's mostly off the map is lot 10. Let me jump back up to the first page. So this is the single-family lots that are proposed and the private open area, open space. And then everything with the blue is, the blue marks steep slopes, but that's lot 10.
And where would the easement be?
The trail easement would come off Beartown Lane, roughly follow the property line, and then connect between the Forester lot and lot 6. This one's lot 6 on the northern end of the property.
Okay, and that avoids most of the wetland, which was what I was interested in. Okay.
Great.
I'll just add that the reason the staff report and the conditions of approval keep both options open is we don't know which way things are going to go, and it makes it easier for the applicant to file final plans and have to avoid coming back for an amendment. So in the era of flexibility, just writing it in rather than having to come in for an amendment.
That's good to know. Thanks. Anything else, gentlemen? Okay. Well, thank you for coming in. I think we're good to close this hearing at 7:44 p.m.
Right? Thank you.
Thanks.
And
I didn't do this in the beginning, so I'm just gonna do it now. Is there any member of the public that has a question for the board unrelated to agenda items tonight? I'm not hearing anything. Okay, good.
You can do it anytime you want.
Okay, perfect.
Emily, that was a well-done report.
Thank you.
That's one thing that, really well done. I mean, to the point where almost didn't need to ask any questions, because it was just all, between the report as well as the way the conditions were, posed and phrased. Nicely, very well laid out.
Thank you.
I felt bad that we didn't have any questions for you, but
It was all, I was thinking about it earlier, it was all really just in the report.
Thank you. Well, I think we've been playing with the formatting to make it a little bit easier, and like these past couple of months, like working with Dave and working with Colin, just getting even more clear and efficient with
Recording stopped.
the bylaw to everybody.
Yeah.
So kudos to these guys for
I mean, this is
along
not,
for the ride.
it's not an easy parcel to develop, and it's got all kinds of moving parts and pieces, and it's all pretty much laid out.
Yeah.
All right.
Back to the DRB meeting of May 26th. It is 8:17 p.m. Do I have a motion for DP 26-12 Asch Enterprises?
Yes.
Thank you, Brian. Could you please read that? And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Scott?
Are we gonna read it?
Yeah.
Is it read already?
Yeah, could you please read that, Brian?
Yep. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Brian Curtis, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of May 26, 2026, accept the findings of facts and conclusions of law on DP 26-12 and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. They have been modified as
First is finding of fact.
finding the facts, section 3, the location, distance from residential neighborhoods and nature, shift changes between 1:45 and 5:30 a.m. of the proposed development make the use of bicycles highly unlikely.
Conclusion of law.
Inclusion of law, section 3, a reduction of the number of short-term bicycle racks to the existing racks is permitted.
And then condition of approval.
And then a condition of approval, final plans shall provide a reduced number of bicycle spaces as follows: 13 short-term bicycle parking spaces and 16 long-term bicycle spaces, and 2 existing end-of-trip facilities must be maintained. This approval authorizes the applicant to file.
Number 21.
Oh, sorry, I missed one. And 21, final plans must include a plan for boulders every 30 to 50 feet along the wetland buffer, and boulders every 15 feet where the development is within 10 feet of the buffer, or signs on permanently installed metal posts in lieu of boulders. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you, Brian. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Matt. Any discussion? All right, I'm going to take a roll call vote. Chair is a yay. Scott Riley.
Yay.
Jim Brizzolera.
Yay.
Brian Curtis.
Yay.
Matt Fraser.
Yay.
Dylan Hornibrook.
Yay.
We have 6 yays, no nays. Motion carries. Next up, DP 2504. Do I have a motion for that?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Matt.
As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Matthew Fraser, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of May 26, 2026, accept the findings of facts and conclusion of law for DP 25-04 and approve this discretionary permit, subject to the conclusion of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from the DRB, and then seek the administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you, Matt. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dylan. Any discussion? All right. Yay or nay? Chair is a yay. Scott Riley?
Yay.
Jim Brzalera?
Yay.
Brian Curtis?
Yay.
Matt Fraser?
Yay.
Dylan Hornibrook?
Yay.
6 yeas, no nays, motion carries. Do we have a, sorry, what's that? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from May 12th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 12th as written.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Scott. Second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I don't really have to do that for that one, do I? But that's okay. I usually.